Hey, this is Tim Melanson here in Moncton, New Brunswick, and I want to share with you something fascinating. I read it in a book called The Laws of Success by Napoleon Hill, and this book was written long ago. It was the book written before Think and Grow Rich, and it studied a bunch of successful people back in the day, and the information is just absolutely amazing. Basically, here's how I understand it, and maybe I can simplify it for you guys. The space in space, up in outer space, the vacuum, I guess, it's called ether. And here's an interesting concept is that, out in space there's lots of ether, and there's planets here and there. Well, if we were to take a look at ourselves and, right down to the smallest building block, we're all built of atoms. And what's an atom? Well, if you can remember back to your old physics class, an atom is just a nucleus with some stuff floating around in it. And what is that floating in? Well, it's floating in ether as well. So what that means is that we are all connected through the ether. And in fact, actually, we're made up more of ether than we are of matter. It's just that it's more closely close together, more closely condensed in our bodies and on Earth. So this concept is really interesting. First of all, just the whole thing about us all being connected is kind of interesting. But how do we communicate with each other? We communicate through vibrations. That's how we communicate. And if you were to take a tuning fork and just hit it, well, the first thing that would happen when it starts to vibrate is it would start to make a sound. It would be like a low pitch, then a higher pitch, and then you can't hear it. And the next thing that would happen as it vibrated faster is it would start to heat up, and then you start to feel the heat coming off of it. And as it heated up enough, then what would happen is it would light up. Now all of a sudden, you can see it. So it now just went through 3 of our senses. It went through hearing, feeling, and sight. What are our brains doing? Well, our brains are electrical impulses that are basically causing vibrations. So, in theory, these vibrations are going out through the ether, and, maybe at some point we might be able to communicate and we might be able to actually read minds. Maybe that's what part of our brains is for right now. Well, I do know that we do read minds a little bit, because have you ever noticed that you can sort of feel what people are thinking? You can feel the tension in a room when people have been fighting. We sort of have some of those abilities now, and maybe that's what psychics can tap into. They can just read that a little bit more because they've practiced it, right? Now, Thomas Edison created a bunch of things. On top of the light bulb, he also created the radio. So he was able to take some of these vibrations and translate them, send them through the ether, and then decode them on the other side, and that's how we hear our music on our radio. Pretty fascinating stuff, right? Now, what the Mastermind chapter was all about is it's about basically the amplification of all these vibrations. So, if you were to take each one of these things, sound, if it was just me and I was yelling and you were way in the other end of the city, you probably wouldn't be able to hear me. But if we had enough people, 500,000 people, and we all yelled, maybe you might be able to hear, because it amplifies, right? Now, what about, heating? 1 heater, 500 heaters, big difference. 1 light bulb, 500 light bulbs. Well, what about our brains? And the whole thing about it is that what if we could get, maybe 3 to 7, I think is the ideal numbers from the book, if I can remember correctly. If you can get those minds together on the same wavelength, then what happens is that you can now elevate your thinking to a new level, and you can start to pick ideas out of the ether. Pretty fascinating stuff, and maybe that explains a little bit of why there are hieroglyphics written in different places in the world when they couldn't have communicated back in the day. They're all sitting together creating a mastermind and elevating their thinking, and maybe they were able to communicate with other people across the world through the ether. So what that means is that it's another concept here. Imagine you're thinking about an orchestra. And the orchestra is, 15, 20 pieces, maybe 30 pieces, and it's beautiful. And I don't know if you've ever heard an orchestra play before, but it can move you, to tears. But what if one person's off key? What if one person's out of tune? It screws the whole thing up. So think about that when it comes to your mastermind and the people that you surround yourself with. If one person that you spend a lot of time with is out of tune with you, then you can not only ruin your own mastermind, but you can start to attract things that they're attracting. And what that means really is you are who you hang around with. And so in order to, number one, elevate your thinking to a new level, put yourself around people that are on the same wavelength. and try to avoid as much as possible the people that their thinking is not at the same level as yours. So I hope that helped, and enjoy. Bye-bye.